Excellent.
So we are live, right?
Yes,
we're
we
live.
are live now.
Okay.
The Kimberly's tuning.
We lost somebody. We lost the co-host.
We are live.
Yeah, so we will start now.
Okay.
Shweta, you can start now.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Bunn and ASEAN Coffee Federation webinar on the third wave of brewing coffee. So for this afternoon, we've invited experts and judges and brewers, champions and winners. Actually, there are only two people, but they are very well experienced in brewing coffee. So for today, we're going to have Mr. Jaku from Taiwan and Ms. Regine Y from Malaysia. You'll hear from them later. For now, I'd like to open this by, of course, thanking Bunn and the ASEAN Coffee Federation for putting this together. And I'm Pasita Juan. I'm with the Philippine Coffee Board and a board member of the ASEAN Coffee Federation. So for this afternoon, I'll be your host and moderator. This afternoon, I'd like to get the ball rolling by asking our president to give the welcome message, Mr. Victor Ma. Victor?
Thank you, Chit. Good to see you again. A warm welcome to everyone who has tuned in to this webinar. Good afternoon. I'm sure you are going to be enjoying this webinar. It's something different. It's brewing on third wave. And we have very good people who are on the panel. Regine, who will share her personal experiences, and Jake, of course. I'm sure everybody knows Jake very well in the region. He's been one of our very strong supporters of all our events around here. So without further ado, I want to thank Bunn for putting this together with the ASEAN Coffee Federation, and of course, Chi Wu, who heads Bunn in Asia Pacific. Warm welcome to. Thank you for taking part, for putting this together with us. Okay, Chit, back to you.
Hang on. So, thank you, Chi Wu, for this wonderful opportunity for ASEAN Coffee Federation. And we really wanted to have something very relevant in these times where people are at home and probably batch brewing coffee for the family. And people want to know, like, what's the difference between getting an espresso and using a brewer? And so we've invited Chi Wu to tell us more about Bunn's initiatives through this webinar. Chi Wu?
Thanks, Chi. So, and also thanks, Victor, for keeping me company here. I appreciate that. So, the underlying premise and the rationale for us to come out with this brewing enthusiast hangout, well, it's something that started last year in the US. Our Bunn headquarters, Springfield, Illinois, actually had the first session December last year. They had the second one in February this year. So the reason behind it was to have the engagement with customers on the brew coffee, and how to promote the appreciation of brew coffee. So it's a sort of a platform, or if you may, for people to come together, like-minded people who are interested, including coffee professionals, and to share their learnings and their knowledge with the wider community. Right. So I think it's such an honor and privilege to be here for us to do this in collaboration with ASEAN Coffee Federation, because I think their mission and objectives are similar to what we also want to try and achieve, which is to educate and promote coffee. All right. So and I think we'll probably be able to share a little bit more later on. And it's so apt that we have a topic here about third wave coffee, right? This particular movement, as it seems, and we all know the first, second wave, and then now the third wave. Third wave, first wave is the, I think, I want to kind of go into what I know you're going to be touching on that, but the third wave, I just want to touch a little bit, which is basically about raising the awareness about quality of the green beans, to the processing, to the roasting, and then to the method of brewing as well. The whole works. All right. So it kind of elevate the mindset of the practitioners as well as the consumers about quality. And so one way we can do that is to leverage on technology, which I will touch more later. All right, thanks. Back to you, Shi.
Okay, and of course, people are asking, why is there a third wave for brewing? You know, a lot of people actually have their first taste of coffee with brewed coffee. And so it's very important that everybody gets to know about the basics of how to really extract the quality of, or the taste of the coffee through brewing. And we can learn a lot of ways of brewing. We can have batch brewing, we can single cup brewing. But our next speaker will actually show us a different way of selling coffee, of letting you taste coffee. He is very serious in his coffee journey. And now, if you happen to be in Taiwan, or more particularly in Taipei City, you must come and see our speaker in his cafe, which is called the Taster Coffee Limited. Is that right, Mr.
Yeah,
Hu?
Taster's Coffee. Yes.
Taster's Coffee, yes, because what you bring with you to his cafe is your desire to taste real coffee. So without further ado, we're very honored to have with us today a judge, a champion, a certified Q grader, and a lot of other certifications tucked under his belt. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Jake Hu. Jake?
Hi, I'm Jake, and this is the way we when you visit our coffee shop, and you will receive like this. We don't have any menu. We change our serve the brew coffee maybe every week, and that's your menu. You will get. It's like 5 little cups of coffee. It's iced because in the morning we taste our coffee and we preserve the rest to let the customers to decide. So you walk in, you sit down, you taste all these 5 cups of coffee without any further information, just give you the direction to drink. And you taste the coffee. If you don't like any of the coffee, I will show you the door. And if you want the particular 1 cup, then we can communicate. Like ask the customers what you like about this coffee and what you don't want about this coffee. Maybe the acidity is too high, or maybe the bitterness is too strong. So after a brief communication, then we can brew according what you want. So that's the my ideas about the third way brew coffee. It's like brew on demand. That's the I think it's our concept. It's like that. Okay. So especially if like 2 customers or more than 1 person walk in, at that moment when they're trying to pick up the coffee they like, they will really put down the cell phone and start a conversation with themselves. So you can observe they start to communicate and really talk to themselves, like what the cups is they really like. Okay, the different people shows like different characteristics. Like some people will just drink all of the coffee at once, or some people just taste a little bit and maybe put it forward and taste a little bit and put it back or something like that. Then he will taste the second round very detailed. Anyway, it's a very I like to do this kind of the sensory experience. Then they will have their own cup, and that time they will have all the coffee information they want. So when they choose the coffee, it's actually no words, no languages, no any information distract their attentions. And I think that's also what wonderful about the brew coffee, because the brew coffee, the concentration is not very high, not like espresso. So there will be a lot of delicate characteristics in the cups. So you can enjoy taste little by little, one by one, and from the high temperature to the low temperature, you can enjoy
Jake, you're
every
muted.
detail.
I think you hit the
Yes.
mute button, Jake.
Sorry, let me try.
We can hear you.
Mm.
I think we can hear
We
you.
can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jake, you have to click the unmute button now.
Again?
Okay, right. You're on now.
Okay, so where should I start?
Well, you said that taking brewed is better than espresso when you want to know the flavors.
Yes, because it's not that high concentration. So all the delicate things will like expressing the carb, and you can taste one by one, little by little. And also from hot to cold, you can enjoy the all the differences during the temperature change.
Do you recommend that the customers finish all the 5 in full?
No, no, I won't. Okay, that depends on what they like or what they don't like, you know. So I won't recommend they finish all 5. But if they really cannot find anything they want, so they are always welcome to finish all 5 little cups and work out, and that's fine.
And there's no charge for that.
No charge for that, of course.
So you have shown them that they can actually be the judge of their own drink.
Yes.
And to make sure that what they order, they will finish.
Yes.
That's good.
And
I'm
you know
sure,
what?
yeah.
I did these things for more than 2 years, and I always put one geisha varieties, at least one geisha varieties among these 5 cups. And the interesting thing is, for now, more than 40% of the customers, I mean, out of the coffee industry customers, they will naturally pick up the geisha. I don't know why, but they think it's not acidic. Actually, I roasted the geisha actually very light, but they won't think it's like a very acidic coffee. They just say, oh, it's so floral and it's so tasty, so they want to pick that cup. That's the very interesting result.
Okay, thanks for that sharing, Jake. I'm sure we have a lot of questions from our attendees. But
Yes.
for now, if you have a burning question, please put it in the chat box and we'll tackle it later with Jake and our next speaker. So thank you, Jake. Our next speaker, she is from Malaysia, from Petaling Jaya, and she has a cafe, but that's her passion. Her real day job is actually in business development, but coffee being her passion and being part owner of this cafe, Regine Y has won many of the Brewers championships, the latest one being 2018, I think. I mean, I think she just missed out 1 year, but she's won from 2015, you know, so she's been brewing a lot of winning coffees. And I heard from her during our pre-webinar chat that she has used batch brewers. She has used all kinds of brewers. She also uses the siphon, of course. And to tell us more about her tips about brewing coffee or third wave brewing, let's welcome Regine Y of Malaysia. Regine?
Hi. Thank you for inviting me for the talk. My pleasure to be here with all the planners and also, especially you guys. So yes, my primary job is in medical devices industry. So you'll be surprised that you find out that I'm actually so much into the coffee competition. But competition is just a way for me to always learn more or more in depth about coffee. So yeah, so I'm been in the dental industry for now for almost 3 years. But before that, I'm in the orthopedic industry. So it's all dealing with the human bone spare parts, I will say. Yeah. So I come into coffee industry in 2015, where there is the time that the third wave coffee just started in Malaysia. I think in 2013 or 2014. So started to get into the networking and know all the coffee people, start to do all cupping, take the courses. and start to learn more about specialty coffee. Of course, I'm a coffee lover since young. I drink all the instant coffee. So I still remember my first cupping experience. There is actually 5 specialty coffee for us to evaluate. And my first cup of my favorite is actually Indonesian Mandarin. And my less preference one is Kenya AA. I still remember very clearly. Yeah, but I believe by now it's actually changed. My preference will be Kenya for the first. Yeah, and Indonesia bean, of course, they are improving now. You know, we get some of the very good Indonesia beans, especially from the West Java. They are actually, progressing as well. Yeah, so then after learn more about coffee, then I started to involve myself in competition. My first competition is actually in AeroPress competition, where I participated because this is a competition that you do not need to present. Basically, you just need to go on stage and brew your coffee. After that, the judges will just try your coffee and then they will vote for which will be the winners. So, and I got kicked out in the first round. So after that competition, I'm actually asking myself, why is that happen? How my competitor is actually doing better than me. So then the next year is where we had our first Malaysia Brewers Cup. It's actually the second Brewers Cup, but it's sanctioned by the government, the national level, that you can actually send a champion to international level. So I actually participated in that year, 2015, and I'm the champion of the year. Yeah, that is actually the first experience. And from there, you can actually know what you did better than your competitor, or what it actually present in your cup. Because all the score is written, and you can actually try to improve your cup from the score sheet. Yeah, so thereafter, I believe, if I want to continue to improve myself in brewing, that is the way that, where I can refer to the score sheet, and I can always ask the judges where I can improve myself. Yeah, so therefore, I try to involve more and more in the competition, especially when the next year they have the siphon competition. I have no clue, no idea about siphon, but because of siphon competition, I actually push myself and my team members to learn about siphon, to try to pick up all the technical skill within a short period of time. And then after that, represent Malaysia for the competition. And yeah, that's where I met Jack as well in the international level. Yes.
Okay. So your favorite method of brewing is the siphon, I would like to guess.
Yes, siphon is always very interesting brewing method, I will say. From the first, when I saw my friends is brewing with siphon, I said I'm not going to touch the equipment, because you are actually using a heat method to brew the coffee. To me, is very dangerous. I'm a careless kind of person, so I said I better don't touch that equipment. But because of competition, I have to overcome all these fears. So I learned and I pick up the skill, I think within 3 months. So for now, I will say siphon is actually a very easy or simple to use kind of equipment. Yeah, as long as you know some of the techniques and some of the tips, right? So it can actually brew a very good cup of coffee.
Okay, but I'm sure you've used AeroPress, you've used the siphon. I'm scared of using the siphon because I can be clumsy. But you in the Brewers Championships, you were telling me that there are 2 different kinds of brewing, and you use also batch brewers, and you also use your preferred other kind of brewing. Can you tell us more about that?
in Brewers Cup competition, usually you will have two categories. One is for the compulsory service and one is the open service. So for the compulsory service, we have to use the sponsor equipment and sponsored beans to brew the coffee. So that is where it involves or the batch brew machine for us to get the water for our brewing. Yeah, in that category, usually the competitor will use the gadget that they are more comfortable with, and also they are more confident in to extract the flavors of the sponsored beans. Yeah.
So that involves a lot of practice. So you must brew a lot of coffee even in your home.
Yes, I will say yes. But I'm also kind of lazy person. So
Okay.
usually I push myself. I push myself further during competition period. But when competition is over, so I will relax and lay back. Then I will
Okay.
always my choice of brewing will be always a clever dripper because it's fast.
Okay. Well, that's very
Yeah.
practical. So thank you, Regine, for sharing your
Thank you.
experience, and I like your competitive spirit that you are not lazy when it comes to competition. Okay, so if you have any questions for Regine, our audience will see it probably in the chat box later, or our secretariat will send it to us to ask our speakers. But hang on, because now we are going to introduce Mr. Chi Woo Ho, and of course he will tell us what Bunn, one of the pioneers in all these brewing technologies, what Chi Woo will explain to us is what Bunn is doing in the brewing coffee sector. Chi Woo?
Thanks, Chi. So before I go into how the Bunn equipment is able to, deliver this, quality cup consistently, I want to touch first a little bit about the history of drip coffee analysis. So maybe I got a couple of slides. I think I'll show that so that's easier for everyone to see as well. So yeah, that's our corporate headquarters in Springfield, Illinois. Now, so these are the things I want to talk about. How the Gold Cup standard actually came about. Some of you may know. Some of you probably, those who have attended the SCAA, or maybe nowadays known as SCA, coffee brewing program, their educational and certification program, you would have come across this. So I'll touch on history of drip coffee analysis because it's both an art, but very much a science as well. All right, so there's a lot of research and data that goes behind it. And then I will cover the brewing key elements and the brewing process, and then most importantly, I will cover the brew control chart. All right. So first of all, if you look at the history, all right. So the history of brew coffee started in 1952 with the formation of Coffee Brewing Institute. Right, in the 1950s in the US, I think there were a lot of people drinking coffee and so many people having different opinions of what constitutes a good cup of brewed coffee. All right, so the National Coffee Association, which was affiliated with the Pan American Brewing Institute, decided to commission a study on this. So they engaged none other than Dr. Lockhart, who's a food technology scientist in MIT in Boston, right? Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And so he was tasked to spearhead this, scientific study. So he headed the CBI from 1952 to 1964. And within that period of time, he did tremendous amount of research on coffee, in terms of coffee water ratio and things like that. And at the end of it, of course, but the main contribution that he actually gave to the specialty coffee world is this tool known as the brew control chart that is still with us today, but that is with a lot of laborious research that gone into it, scientific research. So now the CBC, which is a Coffee Brewing Center, was established in 1964. How did that happen, right? CBC took over from CPI when the food service industry, the restaurants, the cafes, started to want to learn more about how to brew a good cup of coffee, because there's a lot of research and studies done. So, but it wasn't formalized. So CBC was established to then provide the training to the food service industry. So now the CBC then took over, and it was run from 1964 to 1975, taking on a lot of things that the CBI has put together. All right, so and it came out with the Golden Cup Award as well, the CBC, to kind of reward and acknowledge, industry leaders, those who adopt this so-called Gold Cup standard. And to a large part in the late 70s, I think we had, in the 70s, late 60s and 70s, the CBC was actually funded by a lot of coffee growing countries, particularly Brazil and Colombia. So eventually the funding dried up. So, it was closed in 1975. CBC also started to come out with this booklet. This is the CBC Coffee Workshop Manual, all right? And it basically took the body of knowledge from CBI and put it in there, right? So there was a gap of time, not until the formation of SCAA, Specialty Coffee Association America, in 1982, right? They started to relook at how to elevate the standards of brew coffee. And of course, it revived the Golden Cup Award in terms of education program and certification. And it also came out with the Coffee Brewers Handbook in 1994, right? That's the year that SCAA put together basically the findings and the wealth of information, scientific research done by CBI, right, into a proper handbook. Because in those days it was quite scattered, right? They used to be giving out pamphlets and all that, right? So that's a little bit about the history of how a Gold Cup standard came about. And of course, as we know now, SCA continue in terms of their program. They still have this Gold Cup standard, and the Coffee Brewers Handbook still exists today. So just to share that this has come a long way, at least in the modern history of coffee. That's how this evolution of that knowledge came about. So I'm next going to talk a little bit about CBI's primary learnings, right? I think one of the key was that learnings was that they identified the key elements or essential elements of brewing, right? So, which is, I'll just quickly touch on, which is the five of them, which is water. Water is important, but 98% of any brewed coffee is actually water. So there's certain definition of how what the water that we use needs to be, right? And the minerals in the water, how it affects the taste profile. And then of course, temperature. So the CBI actually kind of defined what would be a ideal brew temperature is between 92 to 96 degrees. Of course, with a lot of practitioners out there, some would prefer certain specific degrees, some another, and so on. But within that range, right, that would be the ideal range. And then time essentially is the contact time of the water with the coffee grounds that allows for the extraction, right? Where the contact of and the other thing is of course the grind size. The grind size matters because grind size would then determine also what is the brew time that it would need to be, right? So if it's a coarser grind, then you probably need a longer time, right, to brew to have a better extraction. And then turbulence. Turbulence is the action of mixing of water with the coffee grounds that then separate it to allow water to flow through. That allows for it to carry the coffee materials, the soluble materials into the cup or into your server. All right, and then last but not least, the filtration. And of course, the findings of CDI was that paper filters, oxygen processed paper filters provide the clearest cup of coffee, right? Amongst all different filtration methods, that was the best. Of course, nowadays, as things evolve, there are talks about additional elements. Of course, the equipment plays a part too, right? So the apparatus, the devices that you use, and how you maintain them and how you calibrate them, that also impact it's also key elements of brewing. All right, so I want to then touch on the other aspect that CDI touches on, which is the brewing process. It very methodically kind of highlighted, how the brewing process happened, right? Essentially, there are three. Wetting process is when nowadays, of course, in equipment we call that pre-infusion. Sometimes we call it pre-wet, right? Where you allow the grounds to be kind of soaked, or even when you do a hand pour, you do a bit of that pre-infusion to allow it to degas, and you need to do within the first 10% of your brew time, you want to be able to evenly wet out the grounds so that you will be able to have a better uniformity of extraction later on. Right, so that's the wetting process and that wetting phase. And then the next phase would be the extraction phase. So extraction is when the bulk of the water comes in to create turbulence and then also agitate the ground for you to extract the materials, right? Soluble materials, whether it's volatile, non-volatile, into your vessel, your server or your cup. You are doing single serve. And then last but not least, the hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is a chemical reaction that gives you the aromatics and the flavor of the coffee. All right, so these are the brewing process that CBI talked about. Now let's move on to the brew control chart. So I want to say this brew control chart by far is the biggest and most important legacy of the CBI, Dr. Earl Lockhart, when he came out with this, that has gone through the test of time over, which is something that handed out down to today's generation, something that allows us to be able to dial in coffee and be able to quantify in a very verifiable manner the whole brewing process that is repeatable, right? It allows you to do that. All right, so I'm just going to quickly touch on that. What is the coffee brewing chart about? So, I think here the definition is that it represents the relationship between the strength, the extraction, and the brewing recipe, right? And obviously, it's the amount of material. It measures the amount of coffee material in the finished cup as well as the amount of coffee material taken out of the grounds. All right, so if you look at the chart, so typically if you attend some of those courses, they provide you a chart where you can actually plot, and you obviously need to have a refractometer, right? They look something like this. There's a pocket one, there's some bigger ones as well, where if you are pretty serious about the science of brewing, where you want to be able to be precise. And I think earlier on we talked about it with the sharing amongst the pre-webinar, we discussed among the panelists. I think Jake also highlighted that he does use and he do measure TDS, to kind of record it down, and so that it's a way to ensure that it's repeatable. All right, so if you look at the brew control chart, so the first and foremost, these diagonal lines show the grammage or the throw weight of the coffee to water, right? Which is in this case 1 liter of water, the grams per liter, right? So that's the diagonal line, and you will see on the x-axis is the extraction, the soluble U, right? How much of the coffee material that's extracted from the water, and then the strength on the y-axis actually measures the soluble concentration. All right. So that diagonal line is actually a coffee to water ratio. All right. Next. So, so the strength is actually the percentage of coffee flavor material to the amount of water in the cup, right? The soluble materials that's in the cup, all right? And the goal is to be within 1.15% to 1.35% of coffee flavoring material. So that is the specified by CBI and according to SCA with a lot of protracted testing and all that, they identify this is the most, that gives the most ideal, desirable outcome. So it's within that TDS, so that can only be measured if you use a refractometer, right? A coffee hydrometer or coffee refractometer. All right, next we have the extraction. So the extraction is a soluble yield, the amount of coffee material removed from the grounds during brewing, right? And the goal is to remove about 18 to 22% of the solubles, right? So that again is found to be the most ideal, right? So with that, we are able to have, the sweet spot. So the square in the middle is exactly around that would be defined as a gold cup, right? The gold cup standard, which is the optimal flavor, right? Balance. Obviously, it takes a little bit of experimentation to see whether what suits better, because at the end of the day, every coffee has a voice, right? Every coffee is unique, has got its own nuances, and also it, to a large extent, depends also on the consumer, right? Depending on the different countries, the palate and different preference might be a little bit different. But what this brew control chart does is allow the possibility for coffee professionals to then be able to, from dial in the right recipe and be able to replicate it to deliver a consistent, good quality cup of brewed coffee to a wider audience, right? And that brings me to the last part, which is on, when we talk about brewing technology, which a brewer behind me, right? It's obviously that the third wave started with artisanal coffee, right from green bean cultivation, growing, roasting, importing, and then preparation method. And a lot of it is very unique in the sense that it's like on demand, as Jake mentioned, and it helps customer to appreciate, using a hand drip, hand pour, siphon. But the taste profile is there, but it also acknowledges the fact that every coffee bean has a voice, and you want to hear it sing, right? And you want to be able to, kind of share that with a wider audience. Because third wave started in the 80s with a very small community of coffee roasters and cafe owners, and they kind of experimented with it and exploration, and then different methods of preparation. But it has kind of become accepted nowadays that, and the nice thing from my perspective is that, hey, it elevates the consumer's appreciation and expectation of a good cup of coffee. So anywhere you go now, you want to have a good cup of coffee. You won't settle for second best or something that's just so sort. And there's a lot of preparation behind it. And so, if being a coffee professional, and sometimes we play the role as consultants as well. You may be engaged by somebody to say, hey, how would you then bring that good quality coffee to maybe a certain channel, whether it's the hotels or maybe a certain restaurant chain, or maybe to certain specialty cafes, and it's expected, customers demand that And it's good for the industry because this whole third wave, it takes the producers, growers, and the consumers to work hand in hand because it elevates the drive for good quality coffee, and it brings up a bit of the price and allowing people to be willing to invest more, even at the growing and producer side, and consumers willing to pay a little bit more as well, because now this whole cycle of educating, exploration, and the way we do it to ensure consistent, repeatable, good quality coffee is through the brew control chart and using the equipment that allows for programming, simplifying it to just a press of a button. But that's in a nutshell what this relates back to third wave coffee and equipment batch brewers. All right, so that's all I want to share today. I hope that's something interesting. So back to you, Chi.
Thank you, Chiwu. And definitely, there's so much to learn about individual brewing, like what Jake is doing, and batch brewing. If people wanted that repeated, that taste or sensory experience repeated every day, then there has to be some way to do the programming or use technology to make sure that each cup tastes as good as the last. So now we have some questions from the audience and some questions from me also. And probably we can also ask each other. So I'd like to call back our panelists to help us understand the thoughts about third wave, because third wave to other people, like third wave, does it mean more fruits and less chocolate? Does it mean individual cups versus just different just espresso? So Jake, may we ask you, like, if you I'm sure you also teach a lot of students, how exactly will you define third wave in brewing?
Okay, the third wave in brewing, I think the first keyword is personal, or we can call it like a custom brew, or it's like brew on demand. Okay, that means the customer is actually the center, the most important person, and you need to listen and to understand what they really want. Then by changing all the parameters of brewing to create a cup exactly the customer wants. So that's the things that's the concept to me for the third wave brewing. So it's like very personal things, and all the variable you need to design all the from the roasting to the brewing parameters to help the customers to get exactly what they want. So that creates a unique sensory experience with the customers, and that kind of experience will bring the customer back into your shop again and again.
So Jake, do you find that they end up, if you give them a set of 5, let's say
Yes.
Victor comes to your cafe like every day, and
Yes.
does he have the tendency to choose the same flavor notes?
If it's like a frequent visitors, usually they will try different things because they want to experience different experience. So that's the more interesting things. It's like people come to my shop. Usually they want to explore new things. They want to have new experience. So they tend to pick the different things instead of always the same things, and which is good because we know nowadays we want to showcase the flavors, the characteristics from the varieties, from the process, from the origins. and all these things, too many different kind of coffee you can taste. So always willing to try new things, which is good for us and also good for the industry. So that's what I found. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So in Taiwan, you would
Yes.
say that locals would have a certain taste profile, and tourists, I'm not sure if you're in the tourist area, but or non-Taiwanese people, will they have a different preference?
I think the Taiwan customers, they usually have like a low loyalty to the certain cup profile. Okay, they love to shop around, they love to experience different things, especially for the young people, yes. But for the travelers, which is interesting, travelers do not want to choose, they want everything.
You mean they drink all the five?
Yes, they will tend to like, if the basic quality is there, they would like to drink, taste all different things. When they find out the unique items, they want to taste it. They want to experience this.
Very interesting. So let's go to Regine. How is it in Malaysia, Regine? I mean, have Malaysians always been coffee drinkers in your experience? Of course, you're very young, but what is your experience with the Malaysian market? Do they prefer a certain taste profile?
I will say, because our Malaysian market is very influenced by the Robusta beans. I mean, the third wave coffee actually kicked in is quite late, maybe like 2013, 2014. So the current market, I will say Robusta market is still there, but the community started to accept specialty coffee. Of course, we always try to educate our customer, to try on the different origins beans. But in fact, you will realize that most of the customer base, they still prefer something that is strong, more chocolatey based, and then they will ask for bitterness. So that is, my observation, throughout some of the, even when we have a chat with the cafe owners, that is what we realized. So we will start to introduce them with the specialty coffee, try to tell them why is our coffee different compared to those local coffee,
Shops.
the coffee tiam, yes, the coffee shop that we say. Yes, coffee tiam. So, they need to educate. But I think the trend now is getting better and better because we have more home brewers, especially for the first lockdown since last year. More and more people, tend to learn to brew at home. I think the trend now is getting better and better. Yes, it's something good to see. Especially when the customer come to you and you ask, what do you serve today? What beans do you have? What is the difference between the beans? They will ask. So this is something that is very encouraging.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my next question is actually addressed to Mr. Ma, Victor, because I guess we've been in the coffee business longer than Jake and Regine. So I meant to ask. I mean, Taiwan, of course, has good tea, great tea. Okay, I've tasted some nice teas from Taiwan. And Malaysia too. You also have tea, and so with Singapore. So, Victor, if you may indulge me, how did you see this change from tea drinking to coffee drinking evolve over the last, say, 15, 20 years with Malaysia, Singapore, and even Taiwan? Yeah, we'd love to hear. I never asked you that in our meeting, so I may as well ask you now.
Okay. Well, to be very frank, I think you will never see the demise of local style kopitiam coffee in the ASEAN region. Whichever country it is, we have our different methodology of brewing. But for Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, I reckon we will always see the local style coffee there. Of course, we have seen a change in the profile of people drinking coffee, and this has developed throughout the years. Firstly, with the introduction of the food chains, like McDonald's, and then later on, I think probably the biggest influencer towards trying to taste better coffee or a different type of coffee probably would be Starbucks. I know people might hate that name, but to be very honest, they've really kicked open the doors in a lot of the regions here as an introduction towards it, followed probably by Coffee Bean, and then now, of course, we've seen that change. They brought in bulk brewers coffee, and you see it in all our hotels and fast food chains. They still do bulk brewing coffee for speed, for maintaining consistency in the cup. Of course, then we have the change late in the 1990s, late 1990s. We see the trend moving towards independent cafes popping up slowly but surely, and with the use of the espresso machines. But of course, the third wave came in where people wanted to taste the actual nuances, the different flavors of all the Arabica type coffees around, with pour over, V60s, siphons. Of course, I think like in Singapore, for instance, the siphons probably played a very big part towards having single origin coffees. Companies like Suzuki brought in siphon coffees, full range siphons with the Japanese management showing the way of doing siphon coffee. And of course, then we progress on towards the pour over V60s and all that. Yeah, this trend I think will continue. Today, of course, the millennials are very important. They know what they want. They want the experience, which Jake has mentioned. They'll come in and they'll ask you questions. What is this today? What are you brewing today? Where's the coffee from? They just want to try new experiences with beverages. I think likewise also you see this trend in tea as well, which is slowly coming back again. Not bubble tea, of course. It's entirely different, right? The more single origin types of coffee, tea coming up. But coffee has come a long way in this part of the world in terms of consumption. But as I always say, we will never forget our own local style brewing coffee. That will always live on, I think. And of course, some coffee shops, some kopitiams here have adapted and used bulk brewers as well for that, right? But as I said, the experience there is how, if you're talking about brewing, how can we move and maintain the standards of doing a batch brewing, like Jake says. Jake, for instance, how do we move that? You do your service there, but when you go out into a catering situation, how do you maintain that quality of that coffee?
Please feel free to answer, Jake.
Jake, how do you maintain that?
So like the first thing is like Taiwan, we also have a tea culture, yes. And I think actually the tea culture makes the customers easier to accept the third wave brewing coffee, because we have lots of different varieties of tea. We have different process, like from the white all the way to pu'er. And so it's so easy when you describe or explain the specialty coffee, different varieties, different process to the customers, which they have some ideas about the tea. Then now it's so easy to make them accept and also help them. The tea culture help them so easy to appreciate the different brew coffee. That's the first thing. Then, yes, we still face the huge challenge about to provide the brewed coffee constantly and with the same high quality. And I think the batch brewer still will be the very good result, a very good resolution to provide the high quality brew coffee, because the batch brewer is always like almost everything are automatic and all the parameters are manageable. And then the most important things is the basket shape. That means the extraction layer, the coffee grinds lay down in the basket evenly, and that create a very constant extraction environment. So it's much easier to manage to have a very even extraction than the single cup brewer. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for that, Jake. So everyone just feel free to jump in, even Chiwu, you may contribute to our discussion because I know that our audience, they're interested, they're curious about all these origins and how third wave brewing has really brought farmers and the job that the farmers do to their coffee and brings it to your cup. And I was curious and I asked our speakers what origins they like. And so I know that somebody said Panama and somebody said Kenya. How about in Asia? Let us not include Taiwan for now. How about Southeast Asia? Because with if I say including Taiwan, of course, Jake will definitely choose Alishan. But in Southeast Asia, to be fair,
I would say Thailand.
Thailand. Interesting. Okay.
Yes. In 2009, I mean, before the pandemic, I actually spent a lot of times and taste a lot of Thai coffee, and a lot of samples impressed me a lot. Okay, they choose the right varieties for the right environment, and also the process they improve a lot. So the clean cup they improve a lot. The sweetness in the cup they improve also a lot. And I would say the Thailand producing area will be the most interesting, and you should pay a lot of attention on those areas and see how they develop in the future.
Wow, our members must be clapping. We have members from the Thai Coffee Association listening in, and I'm sure they're happy to hear what you have to say about Thai coffee. Okay, how about Regine? Regine, have you tried some ASEAN, Southeast Asian coffees aside from what you grow in Malaysia, maybe?
Yeah, Malaysia, of course, will be the Liberica. Yes, I totally agree with Jack, for the Thai coffee, which is recently, yes, last year, the batch that my friends, my Thailand friends sent to me is very impressed me. I still remember my first World Brewers Cup back in 2015, where I actually used a blend, Thailand beans with a Panama geisha. And I mean, Jack is actually my head judge.
Yes.
I still remember that clearly.
Yes.
And after the competition with the score sheet, I actually asked Jack, what have I done wrong? Where can I improve? He did mention that, Thai beans, I think during that time, the process, everything is still not that good. So
Yes.
Thai beans will have unpleasant aftertaste. So yeah, that I remember very clearly because I still like that beans. Even until today, I still believe that Thai beans, I mean, even for ASEAN beans, there is a way to improve, but our beans quality can be very, in one day, there will be someone actually present all these beans in the international level competition. I strongly believe that, especially now, I think recently, I have tried like Indonesia, Papandayan, West Java Papandayan is also quite good. Bali, beans from Bali is also quite good. The flavor, everything is quite impressive. And of course, now if I have to choose, I will still choose Thailand as my first choice. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe next time we should have a Liberica tasting contest or tasting, because we also have Liberica in the Philippines, and so we have in Malaysia, and I think Indonesia might
Yes.
have some as well. So,
Yes.
Chiwu, may we ask you, how has this third wave been affecting your development of new equipment for batch brewing? Besides all those technical things that you mentioned, are you seeing a change in how people are performing in terms of using your equipment, Chiwu?
Yeah, Chick, I think very interesting to kind of listen to both Jake and Regine share a little bit about the different type of coffee origins they've tried, and then and every one of them is unique, right, and has its own flavor profile. And I think what we try to do from an equipment manufacturer standpoint is that we try to bring out the best, create the best outcome, because every coffee, single origin or even a blend, would have a different profile, right? In terms of taste, you want to be able to get out the best. And so when we get into development, we have to, nowadays, equipment becomes more and more sophisticated. It's all about how to try to bring the quality even higher. And so that equipment with the programming, with the spray head technology, with the design of the brew basket, the infusion, air infusion in the wave, we call it smart wave. Some other manufacturers call it differently, but essentially to be able to program certain a wider number of recipes in there. So it makes the job of when you bring it to a wider audience, or you go to a certain application in terms of whether it's office coffee or whether it's specialty cafe chains, system-wide, you have quite a number of stores, and you need to be able to replicate that. And you can't compromise on quality, because otherwise too many variables will impact and compromise the quality. But once the so-called experts and the people who are really passionate about dialing in their particular origin of coffee, whether it's Thai, whether it's Vietnamese, it could be Indonesian, it could be Philippines coffee, to get the best outcome, you want to be able to then put that into the programming, and the machine now is able to cater to a wider. It used to be able to only do 6 recipes. Now we can do like with a touch screen and all that. We can actually do almost limitless, unlimited number of recipes that you can program in there. So that's one of the things. And obviously, as we evolve in technology, we incorporate the latest and the best, and then we bring to the marketplace something that would allow the coffee professionals and the practitioners to then deliver that good cup of coffee. And here I want to point out third wave, because third wave really kind of resonate and highlight about the quality that's important in the whole chain, the whole value chain of putting emphasis on quality, right down to the consumer, right, to a wider audience. So that be done through a batch brewer, because when you go to a lot of applications, speed of service becomes critical. And then, of course, we are now with COVID, and that's why we have the 1 meter spacing between Victor and myself.
I thought you were not talking to each other. That's why.
No. So, and
Thank you.
I think it's kind of difficult to do certain kind of application, especially the V60 K-Max and the pour over, because of the this environment that we're in right now.
That's right.
But with a server that can then try.
And for you in Singapore and in Taiwan, most especially, you already have hotels operating, and you have your tourist bubbles. So definitely consistency is solved by brewers like this ones. But Jack, I want to go back to you and ask you, what if a customer comes in and says, I want something more darker roasted? What would you tell the customer?
I would say yes, I do have some dark roast coffee for the customer. Actually, sorry, I drink them all. Actually, one of the One of the
While we
one
were
of the
talking, you
five
were
cups.
chugging each one?
Yes, yes, yes. I still.
Okay.
So actually, I will arrange like one dark roast coffee in the 5 cups. So we do
Ah.
provide some dark roast coffee, and it's nothing wrong. To me, even it's a dark roast, we still can keep some characteristics from the origin. So that will still make the dark roast still very interesting, and you still can recognize where those coffee comes from.
Mhm.
And I personally, I also enjoy the dark roast coffee, especially in the morning. So it's like nothing wrong. And
Okay.
I actually, I roast a lot of dark roast coffee. So I have no problem about this. And my customer never worry about these things. They can accept a wide range from the dark roast all the way to the very light
Well,
roast.
I
geisha.
asked that because you said that in your coffee shop. I hope I can
Yes.
afford the cup of coffee, because
Yeah.
if you're preparing each cup personalized
Yes.
almost,
Yes.
then it cannot be sold, so cheap,
Okay.
if I may say so, right?
Okay. The first thing is, no matter which cup you pick, the price are the same.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
That's
In the
good. That's
beginning,
good.
I think the chance to pick up the geisha or the most expensive one should be maybe probably the same. So I say, okay, no problem. It's every cup, no matter which cup you pick. Every cup, it's like $7.
But
Okay.
you may just get a geisha if you know how
Then
to
I
taste
found
it.
out I found out I'm wrong, because like 40% of the customers pick up the geisha. So I'm not really earned that much. Okay. But it's okay. It's a lot of fun, and it's always great to communicate with the customers and then knowing what they want and provide exactly the experience they want.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's my designs like that, and yes, I do have and in Taiwan, I think to me, okay, actually, like here we have. I hope you can read understand
Yes.
the words there. Actually, we roast the coffee depends on the sweetness development. That means from like the low, it's the low development is like a candy granny, or maybe even lower, it's like totally granny. And to the middle, it's like candy sweetness. And to the high, it's to like the candy chocolate, or even higher, like in the dark roast, maybe most of the sweetness comes from like chocolate type. Okay, so we design our roasted beans depends on the sweetness development. It's not we try not to call it dark roast or like light roast. No, we try to call it the name the coffee by the sweetness development, and it just depends on what type of the sweetness the customer wants. Then they pick the coffee.
Jake, one last question. I mean, for
Yes.
this round, do you serve sugar? Do you serve sugar in your cafe?
No, no sugar, no milk, no espresso, only the black brew coffee, or just I will show you the exit and that's it.
I definitely want to visit your cafe. But like you said, we also have the old style traditional cafes in Taiwan that give you
Yes.
coffees that are easy to drink. And I like that because at the end of the day, we brew coffee so that it's easy to drink and
Yes.
not laborious and not hard to understand. So yeah, thank you for that, Jake. Regine, would you
Welcome.
like to tell us what's happening in Malaysia. Thank you, Jake. Regine, in Malaysia, how is the trend of people? Do they all like the almost candy or?
I'll say, I mean, for espresso base, we always have to serve with uh, the candy chocolate range.
Jake,
Yeah,
you see,
so
we have adopted a new roast level chart. Okay,
So
this is the
good.
Jake chart. Okay.
yeah, so but basically we try to for hand brew, of course, for filter coffee, we try to keep it at for the candy. Just now I forgot already, but it's the like roast range. But of course, for those that we try to convert them from the to the specialty coffee, we will prepare the brew of the day and try to get them to switch from Americano to brew of the day, which we will use single origin rather than a blend. But that we will try to use like espresso roast, a candy chocolate range, so that they can still get that kind of taste, but it's easy for them to recognize and differentiate the Americano and also the brew of the day difference. But of course, local people, like just now you asked Jack about the sugar and also the milk. Of course, we still serve that if customer requests, because at the end, customer, we do not want to turn them down. I mean, we want them to have a good
Good experience. Yeah.
customer. Yes, yes. So we still, if they ask, we will offer. If not, then we try to explain to them. Some of our customer even ask for, I want a very hot latte. Make it a very, very hot latte. So then we have to explain to them the way we froth the milk, what is the best temperature. But in case, because some of the elderly, they ask for that, we still do it for them. Try to really make them happy. At the end, what we want to see is customer enjoy our customer service and enjoy our drinks. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so now it's time for us to get some last words, first from Chi-Woo, and then Regine, Jake, and then of course Victor. So Chi-Woo, how are you liking our discussion so far? Do you have any message for our attendees?
Thanks, Jake. I think this is an awesome webinar. I think it's probably also we need more of this actually. I feel because there's a lot of overemphasis on espresso and espresso-based specialty, which forms the bulk of what second wave is about, right? I think we're still very much that seems to be the bulk of it. But brewed coffee and is equally as important, if not more, right? And I think the question is how to bring it to the mainstream. Right? I think it's still, if we continue to lay low, it's going to be very niche. How do we then elevate that and bring it to the mainstream, and that will kind of feed back into the whole value chain, because from the plantation side and putting special emphasis on the way coffee is grown, cultivation, processing, and then roasting and so on. So, and then right down to, essentially seed to cup, right? And how the brewing methods and how we then leveraging on technology, brewing technology that is, and the science of brewing to bring it to the masses, right? And
Yes.
it will go round and in this manner. So,
and your best contribution, Chi-Woo, is that whenever we go to any hotel or restaurant, that we will get consistently the same good quality coffee that the management has chosen to be its house brew. So thank you very much for that. So Regine, any last words to young cafe operators doubling up as business development people that you're enjoying best of both worlds? So any last words for our audience?
I think for our industry, there's still a lot more to do. We need to educate our customer. Of course, not to forget, try to have a good customer service to the customer, because at the end, that is how you actually welcome back your customer, right? So just continue to educate our group of customers to know what is specialty coffee. Yes, let them appreciate what they are having, in their cup. Thank you.
Thank you, Regine, and good luck. And I hope you have many, many more cafes and many, many more
Thank you.
customers liking brewed coffee and not just hot latte. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So Jake,
Yeah.
a very interesting personalized coffee, but I'm a bit scared because if you don't like any of it, he's gonna throw you out. But Jake, what are your last words for our audience?
Okay, I think everyone here joined the webinar. We all have some experience, like the pleasure of drinking coffee. We all have some moments like that. Like we take a sip and we feel happy, or like when we understand something about coffee, we feel like happy. So I think the most important thing is not about to have a like hot latte or just like a very experimental coffee brewing. It's about help the customers to find out the pleasure of drinking coffee. So to pass our happiness to our customers, to help them experience the same. And I think that that's the most important things. And to make it happen again and again. Yes, and also I need to thank Bunn, because in 2010, I joined the now it's actually no more this certification. It's called the Coffee Brewing Technician Certification. And that was 2010, and it's actually all sponsored by Bunn, and that's my great memory of that thing. So thank you, Bunn.
I'm sure you can take apart a Bunn coffee machine and put it all back.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes,
you,
actually I can.
Jake.
Yes.
Thank you. And
You're
so,
welcome.
final words from our president, Mr.
Okay.
Victor Ma.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, panel. It's been wonderful to hear all your different points of view on brewing coffee and the different growths which you are all keen on. It's been very good, and especially for those who've tuned in or zoomed in on this session. This is the first webinar which the ASEAN Coffee Federation is hosting. We are looking forward to putting up a couple more before we are all let loose so that we can travel around the ASEAN region. Of course, thank you, Chiwu, thank you, Bunn, for getting us started on this program. It's been very interesting. Of course, brewing is a very important part. I think we mustn't forget all our farmers, especially those in the ASEAN region. Let's not forget them. They are very, very important, especially in this present situation. And with the way the world is going on climate change, we must always remember our farmers here. Not only, as I said, throughout the whole of the ASEAN region. I don't have to name all of them, but they're all there. And guys who are tuned in, do remember that we do have some very, very good, wonderful coffees in this region now coming out from Thailand, from Myanmar, from Indonesia, which is seeing a rejuvenation towards putting out very good specialty coffee. And I hope to see some good coffees coming out of the Philippines as well, and maybe from even Malaysia, where they have Savarika. And of course, Philippines is really the place where a lot of development is possible as well. So I look forward to seeing all of you again in our next session. Thank you, Chit, for hosting this.
I want to thank
Thank you. Yes, Chiwu, did you want to say something?
as well, Victor and the Secretariat, I think, for putting this together. A lot of work that goes behind the scene. Stephen and Elaine for organizing this. And also, I would like to also thank our partner, our local distributor, Simplex, for letting us use the premises. So Benjamin, just kind of show yourself, I think.
Hello, hi.
Thanks, Benjamin.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for letting us.
Yeah,
and I think a very conducive environment where we can actually have at least Victor, myself in Singapore be together.
Yeah, although we are socially distanced. Thank you, Chip.
Okay, so
Thanks,
on that note, on behalf of the ASEAN Coffee Federation, this has been Pasita or Chitwan saying, drink your black coffee, drink your brewed coffee, or learn how to brew it to your taste and discover what our great farmers are doing all over the region and actually all coffee farmers around the world. Brewing coffee is one of the best things we can do to help them and to help us enjoy that cup of coffee. Thank you very much and good afternoon. Thank you, Jake. Thank you,
Thank you.
Regine, Victor,
Thank you.
Chiwu. Bye.
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 So Victor.